Have you ever looked at yourself in the monitor reflection, pondering life's biggest questions? Such as, how does that guy have so much more map control than I do? The Armored Command Unit, or ACU, is a bit of a conundrum for a lot of players. It's beefy, it's badass, it's beautiful, but lose it and you lost the game. Understanding your commander's relationship to the units around it at Tier 1 and 2 is the key to using it effectively. If you choose the Turtle Life, your ACU is essentially 2 Tier 1 engineers. That's pretty underwhelming. If you plant yourself firmly on the battle line though, your ACU is worth between 15 and infinite tanks, which is a small improvement. However, you gotta not die to capitalize on that. Well, that and be close to the front line, but nobody's playing 20k maps, right? Your ACU enjoys 2 massive advantages over most units pre-Tier 3. Health and range. The commander is an absolute unit, regenerating substantial quantities of HP, even without veterancy, and starting with a 40 times larger health pool than a Tier 1 tank. It also outranges all the Tier 1 tanks except Aurora's, and with the gun upgrade it can easily kite out every single Tier 1 unit and even the Tier 2 tanks. So why does it die so easily? The ACU only puts out as much damage as about 4 Tier 1 tanks, so it takes a lot of time to chew through all that opposing health. You must kite with your commander. Soak as much damage as possible to avoid your own units dying, but maintain enough range that you don't get overwhelmed. And keeping your commander from getting flanked by positioning your own unit strategically is important. If you do this properly, you can quite easily correct a 2-to-1 disadvantage versus an enemy force. With this much power at your disposal, how could you possibly not be on the front line? Well, there is a risk for all that reward. Your ACU can become bound up in pathfinding and die. It can be sniped by air. You could forget to retreat it while you're tending to something in your base.
So many dumb ways to die. Commander under attack.
That means you need to practice and learn. Here's a group of Tier 1. If you look at the tags, you can see there's about 10 tanks, a few anti-air, couple of artillery. This is something you should absolutely charge with your commander. It will survive 90% of the time, even with 0 micro, and this is a substantial bit of reclaim potential. This group is a bit bigger, but with a few units at your back and the realization that your opponent built too much anti-air, this poses no threat to your mighty ACU. This army has 3 or 4 Tier 2 units and a very heavy portion of tanks. Be cautious engaging. Maybe get the gun upgrade if you want to stay on the front line. This is totally manageable though if you make sure to use your commander's overcharge ability to kill the most valuable units first and maintain your distance. Take time to look at situations like this in game and you'll become a pro at gauging your potential in no time. Just remember to scout behind whatever you're charging so you know what reinforcements might show up. The last thing to mention about the ACU is that aforementioned overcharge. It does a ton of damage. It has a small area of effect, tracks targets, it can effectively deal with most threats until Tier 3. But it requires an E-storage or 2 to use. It might be tempting to build your storage early, but they are quite expensive. You do need to justify that cost against the kill potential. Otherwise, you guessed it, could have been tanks. However, there is no better way to deal with spam so large it clumps up. Choke points, or Tier 2 from your opponent. Drop the gun upgrade for range, overcharge those units, and nom that reclaim. If you're feeling lazy, you can even enable the auto overcharge with a right click. That's less optimal though than manually signing the death warrants of your enemies. So let's say you want to kill an enemy commander, or know what to look for to save your own ACU from certain doom. What do? First of all, scout. Intel. Intel. Intel! Know what is waiting for you. It is critical. Then you can decide whether you should be attacking or running away. Remember those groups of units that we just talked about deciding on engagements for? If you have about 20 tanks and you end up relatively close to an ACU, running away just lets them kite you and get kills. However, if you can move past their commander, you can both tangle them up to prevent their escape and bring more of your damage to bear on them at once. If you really need to slow the commander down, you can force your units to bunch up more by using a Shift G command, causing an absolute pathing snafu. It'll take them an eternity to break free of it. Bonus points for the T1 artillery that can now hit its target instead of being dodged like an absolute pleb. If you don't have sufficient numbers though, it's best to just avoid the enemy commander completely. Unless, of course, your ACU is there to tip the balance. Your ACU is an invaluable tool on the front line. Him attack, him protect, but most importantly, him die to point defense if you forget about his move orders. I hope all you peeps found this tutorial helpful. If you did, please consider dropping a like and a sub below the video. It definitely helps push it out to more people. For those of you who want to help support me making these kinds of videos directly, please consider using the stuff in the doobly-doo to become a channel member, sub on Twitch, or become a patron. I'm eternally grateful to those that already do, even though they sometimes assassinate me in the cheesiest ways possible.
Oh my